Serious question. Will any of your synthesizers last 100 years? Will any of your synthesizers ever be vintage? I think it's an interesting question. My name is Falpon. I'm a composer and musician in Los Angeles, and I also repair and restore a lot of old musical instruments. I was working on this old Space Echo the other day. I had this thought. Every component inside of this Space Echo basically is an off-the-shelf op amp, capacitor, resistor. You can easily imagine keeping this thing running for 100 years. But ironically, if you go to a music shop today and just buy a random delay pedal, I don't know that the same thing is true. Look inside of that thing and you'll find a tiny little DSP chip that's running some custom firmware. And if that DSP chip blows, what are you gonna do? Even if you did want to do like micro soldering for that tiny little chip, you won't have the firmware. So what? It just goes away, I guess. You just throw it away. Just ends up in a landfill. Anyway, I was chatting about this with a friend and she asked me, so what will survive? I happened to be leaning against my .com modular system at the time, and I looked around and I was like, every module in this system will last 100 years. Take a Q106 oscillator. The circuit boards are well laid out. The jacks are socketed so it's easy to repair them. The caps are big through-hole components you can just swap out if you need to. There's no weird proprietary firmware. And on top of that, every board is handmade and hand-tested, and there's a date stamp right there, so you know the last time someone looked at it. How many things in your studio can you really say that about? How many things in your studio are gonna last 100 years? Your fancy new keyboard, your stage piano, your Eurorack sequencer. I don't know that those things will be vintage one day. I think they may end up being garbage one day. And everything in my studio, maybe some of my old vintage amplifiers, yeah, you can keep those running 100 years. But of all the synthesizers in my studio, I think the one that has the best shots to last 100 years is, without question, the .com 5 system. You can get in there and twist the heck out of that knob and then drop the whole thing off the side of a moving truck, and probably the next day, the most you're gonna have to do is pull a couple knobs off and put it back in, and you can do that in 10 minutes. Anyway, to conclude, will your synthesizer last 100 years? Your synthesizer.com modular? Yeah, probably. I mean, it might. It could. It could. And I think that's pretty cool. Cheers.